Salutations and good vibrations, family. I'm out on a sunny day under blue skies. Want to discuss our history about Memorial Day. And welcome, or bienvenidos, to our Latino cousins who understand that they are brothers when they look at their ancestry and their DNA, looking at the African part of their culture, which pertains to the music. A lot of the food and dance is native. Understanding that many of the Africans were already passing through Puerto Rico and congregating and committing commerce with the Taino natives. So when many of you look at your skin and you see the melanin, you think you're African ancestors, for their blood runs through you. On their way to settling Florida and the southeast of America, called the Amerindians. We are one family, those of native ancestry. Understand that their roots and DNA goes back to Africa. And this is before any of the European nations arrived into the region through the help of the Moors. They used the trade routes that the Moors had already established, being seafaring people, knowing and understanding that many of the Latin countries already had Africans living there. In South America, in Mexico, we are starting to understand and discover the history and culture of the original people who were in those areas before they were created as countries, before the boundaries of the European nations came in and set up lines of borders. There were many African tribes already here based on the information given by a study in New Mexico called the Folsoms, because it was done around the town of Folsom, New Mexico. And those African tribes were here 14,000 years ago. That was around the time of the Pyramids family. We understand that they had the original tribes who were living in their regions and areas and territories. So understanding that the African was an original man, and we created many family members from our family tree who are now part of our family. Checking your DNA, many around the world will have African, sub-Saharan DNA. Understanding the contributions, information, education that we've given to the world has put us in a position to be the envy of those who have not. Knowing your ancestry and history and culture and traditions will give you a solid foundation, just as the base of a pyramid. There were pyramids not only in Africa and South America, but there were pyramids around the world, even here in the United States. There are many Latinos who understand who they are, where they came from, and their foundation. And they understand that the universe have a law called rhythm. And that rhythm came from the African. And I'm sure many will say, well, Spain had rhythm, but Spain also had the Moors and the African. Barcelona, Catalonia, Madrid, universities, bathhouses, colleges, scientists, philosophers, the African. So I appreciate the acknowledgement and understanding of who you are. And this goes out to my king brother, Julio of New Jersey, who is at home with his family, understanding that family is heaven. Love empowers the family. The community is family. So thank you, Julio. I appreciate that information, and that was a blessing from the Creator. Love, peace, and power to you and yours. We are the roots of the tree. Now, getting down to the root and understanding what Memorial Day was really about originally, many would say it would have nothing to do with Africans, the Africans enslaved, and those after the Civil War. But I beg to differ. And this is because the African has always been a humble, loving, and powerful person. We are the vanguards of righteousness. When those lie, we tell you you lie. And this is what I believe is some of the reason they do not want us around. This is why the world hates us, because we will tell you. There are many who can't rewrite history because when they try, we stand up and says, you are lying. Eres un mentiroso. Those that's living in this condition we have here in this constructed world have challenges. But as a people worldwide, we are a righteous people. We live spiritually, in which we have ingrained in us the laws of nature. There are 42 pontifications of Ma'at, which goes back to even the Native Americans who wore the feather in their head. The laws of nature never change. It's eternal, it's universal, it's cosmic, it's celestial. So any laws man may bring is only a paper law. It's created in the bureaus and binders of books. But we follow the law of nature. When you are a liar, we tell you, you are a liar. So getting to the real meaning of what Memorial Day was originally about. It was after the Civil War, during Reconstruction, when the country was cleaning itself up of the brutal war that happened beforehand, that many say were not because of the slaves, it was for states' rights, which I say was the states' wrong. But many southern states mentioned that they were fighting the Civil War to have their own rights, but the rights they were fighting for was to have people enslaved. And in their own declaration after the Civil War, they pleaded to the Congress of the United States to give them relief, which is restitution for freeing the slaves, because they couldn't take care or till their own land. They wanted other people to till that land for them. And for those who remember history of that time, it is called the same thing today. And what is that called? Reparations. They were paid for each individual person that they released into freedom as payment from the government in US dollars. And just to add a little side note, those of the Latino family, if you remember the Taino Indians, when the Spaniards came from Spain, they also enslaved the Taino Indians. So once the Southern Reconstruction started, there was a group in South Carolina who realized that there were Union soldiers that was killed during the war, that was buried in mass graves. Disrespectfully. These are African freed people that were enslaved, and they have the compassion to look at those Union soldiers who were fighting for their freedom and said that they were disrespected because they were put in mass graves, and decided as a group to do something about it. This is the same state that had the shooting of Dylan Roof in those churches in South Carolina. And what did the people humbly do? They forgave them. There are very few people who would have that reaction in that particular incident. This is the same state that had two of the largest enslaved plantations in the nation at that time, which we never really hear the stories about. There were more than 200 or 300 rebellions in the South. There was also one large one in Louisiana. We were constantly seeking our freedom, to be one with nature, to live one with the world. Now, to remember the Union soldiers that were killed in that mass grave in South Carolina, there were 257 dead soldiers, and they died in a Confederate prison camp. Yes, a prison camp. So the people of South Carolina, those freed African slaves, they dug up the bodies, which they worked on for a week or two, to give them an honorable and respectful burial. So if you notice and you pay attention to detail, you will see that the church wasn't involved. You will see that they weren't forced to do this. They did this because of their spiritual beliefs, which goes deeper than paper. Keep in mind, just digging up the body is not enough. Digging another grave site and individual graves is not enough. They have to prepare these bodies. They have to clean these bodies. And when you deeply think about it, these wasn't even their people. But they see what they were doing was the right thing. They saw the righteousness in what they were doing. Speaking of the Union soldiers, spirituality is always the caretaker of the human life, of the human being, and your soul and your spirit, your compassion, your empathy, and love for one another. And not only did they rebury the Union soldiers that were fallen in the Confederate prison camp, but they also gave them honor and respect by having a parade of over 10,000 people in the streets of Charleston, South Carolina, which had to be held in a few days after the burial. And not only were there 10,000 people, but the parade of African American people was led by the children. Yes, our children. And it was over 2,800 of our children out front as they marched, sang songs, and celebrated their freedom. Wow, 2,800 children. That's family. Think about that. Seriously, think about that. So when you look at it, our children was marching far before the civil rights movement. This was far before what we knew civil rights were. We were the catalyst for civil rights, which is now a standard around the world. But we were treating those oppressing us as we would want to be treated, not knowing or understanding what would be in our path. We have a slew of new laws that were created against us up till this current day. Many new laws are for us. Many heroes came out of that time that were African American women. One of the most notable is Madam C.J. Walker, who was at that time the richest black woman in America. We were some of the only people that had a dress code given to us by United States of America. In the late 1700s, they created the Tignon laws, Tignon, which forced black women to wear head wraps because of their beautifully designed hairstyles was an erotic threat to the area. There's a new law in which we gained a victory, which is called the Crown Act, which is a law that prevents discrimination on how African Americans or anyone else and how they wear their hair in the workplace. It's amazing that we have to create laws on how a person wears their hair. And after Reconstruction, and started a slew of new laws against African American people, such as called the Black Laws, the Jim Crow movement, segregation laws, housing laws, creativity laws, in which they created laws against us patenting our own product and ideas. Many ideas were stolen and signed over to non-African people. And many of those companies are multinational billion-dollar corporations at this moment. So when someone says we built America, we not only physically built it, we was a product to help invest in creative ideas that help this country grow. So when you think about it, we not only built the world-famous pyramids of Egypt, but we also had a part in Mesopotamia, the Sumerians, the Romans and Greeks who learned and went to school in Egypt, as well as Europe and the Moors and those before the Moors, which inhabited England and the area of Northern Europe, with our faces on their breastplates and royal shields, as well as the crown jewels that's in the crown of the Queen of England. all the way to America, and our hand here, building and designing Washington, D.C., to be in the labor force of the Reconstruction, building the White House as well as Capitol Hill. But remember, you're in America. It's all about presentation and packaging. It's about the show family. But when you open that package and find out the real details, that's where you get your surprise. So as you're out enjoying this holiday, thinking about where you came from, never forget your ancestors, the people who laid the foundation before you, who gave their blood, sweat, and tears. And as they say here in America, one drop of African blood, your family. So I appreciate the message this morning from our cousin and brother, King Julio from New Jersey, who woke me up with that blessing. Love, peace, and power to you. Well, thank you for listening. It's been a pleasure. It was enjoyable. I am you, and you are me. Village is family. Neighborhood is family. Community is family. And family is heaven. Love, peace, and power. Pharaoh J. Tassetti.